Even if you want to have the lifestyle of the super rich and you're spending $1 million a year in today's dollars, you need something on the order of like around 10 Bitcoin in 20 years from now, which is still kind of crazy to think about. So you're fairly young, you're like a 25-year-old, but you want to retire in 20 years, age 45. There's multiple forces at play here. One of the big ones is inflation. This is actually exactly what is being used in the model. It's a simple strategy, but it's not easy. It can be quite painful, right? So I think fortune will favor the Stoics. Have a plan. We're talking about retirement here. Big message is have a plan. Hoping and praying that 0.01, 0.001 Bitcoin, and that's just going to work out for you because Bitcoin is awesome, and it is awesome. That's not a plan.
Guys, welcome back to another show. Today, I'm here with the one and only Smitty, Bitcoin researcher. You have a PhD in material science, which we are definitely going to talk about. But before we dive into it, how are you doing today, man?
Couldn't be doing better. I am, the sun is shining, and I am loaded up with coffee. And I'm here with my favorite podcaster.
Fantastic, thank you. By the way, guys, if you don't know Smitty, it means you have not seen our live stream on Wednesday, which is really bad because we go live every single week.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of the crew.
On Wednesday, come and join us live. And if you have any questions, prepare them because we will be answering, of course. But for those people that don't know you, Smitty, do you mind to give us an intro and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, those who probably have come across my stuff know me from X. So I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter. There you're seeing my profile. So I pretty dark themed. I like to have everything kind of blacked out. I'm anonymous. I'm an anonymous researcher, analyst, Bitcoin maxi, whatever you want to call that. I am currently only on X, but I am in the process of trying to bring up a website that folks can find all of my own personal analysis on and much more. It's coming along. I'm targeting having it released sometime this year. So keep an eye out. And we were just talking about YouTube too. So there's some things in the works, but right now I'm only on X. So thanks for bringing this up, Em.
I know you have a fantastic guide on how to retire with Bitcoin and how many Bitcoin do you need. And I'm super interested in this because, as you know, me like you, I'm a degenerate Bitcoin maxi. So the first time I saw your guide, I was like, oh, actually, this is really interesting because it's going to help a lot of people in maybe building a plan for their future, right?
Yeah, so it was unusually controversial, believe it or not, when I first put it up, which might have been one of the reasons it was going kind of viral. But from my perspective, my hope is that it's actually valuable to a lot of people who are considering Bitcoin as a core part of their retirement portfolio. I think retirement is a very important thing to a lot of people. In this country, I'd consider retirement itself in a bit of a crisis. So there's a bit of a retirement crisis, I think, to say the least. I have a lot of family members that I care about that I want to be comfortable and to be able to live their golden years out with no worry and no anxiety, with health and with means. And so, I'm sort of in my middle life years, and it's something I think about now and then. And I have a family, so I wanted to put something together that was just very easy to use. You can certainly find retirement calculators out there, but my goal here was I wanted to have a simple guide that me, my family members could use, my friends, somebody could almost pull up out of a pocketbook or have laminated and put up on their wall as a kind of a quick reference guide that makes some few basic, simple but important assumptions that they could then use as a lookup tool to define for them, help them define how much Bitcoin I actually need when I retire. Why do I need that much? Based on how much I'm going to be spending. And then, how does like monetary inflation, for example, impact that? And so those are kind of like the basic assumptions there, and it can apply to all ages and, within a certain range, all retirement years out to 2075.
Hey guys, I've got some exciting news. November 13 and 14, I will be attending the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam. If you are coming, please stop by, say hello, let's connect in real life. In the description box, you'll find a 10% coupon. Grab it and get your ticket before it's too late. By the way, if you find my content any valuable, it would mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel and slap the like button to support my journey. Thank you.
And yeah, and there's kind of a graphical, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the graph visual aid for the graphically inclined, and then just sitting below that is the tabular format, which is, some people are less visually inclined and want more of a lookup table, which I very much appreciate being in engineering, and that's the goal here. So it's a simple, but I think pretty, looking for a wide net to be pretty universally useful.
I love this, by the way. Thank you for pulling together. And it's super interesting because I have a lot of friends and they say, hey, how many Bitcoin I need? Well, depends, right? Depends on your lifestyle, depends on where you live. But there are indeed numbers you can start drawing here and there, like you've done so beautifully, because there are things we can kind of compartmentalize, I guess, or standardize depending on averages, right? Putting together some ideas, and we have some mathematical numbers now where we can project into the future, right? So super interesting to have a plan. And the funny thing is, people sometimes forget that those kind of thinking has to happen before, right? It's like you want to take the parachute before there is a crash. And maybe there is no crash. Great. But if there is, you have a parachute. So thinking about your retirement, I think it should be one of the priorities for people, because as we know, money, well, it's not in the bank, it's not money, and it's not yours. So now that we acknowledge the problem, well, how do we solve it? Well, this could be one solution, right? Doesn't have to be for everybody. Maybe they can choose gold, they can choose other assets. But for us, degenerate Bitcoiners, this is something we have to consider, right?
Well, it's an interesting point you bring up, and I couldn't agree more that retirement is, I mean, you see, being in social media and just going out in the world, you see how common of a question is that when people are inquiring about what their needs are going to be for retirement. It's just a very natural, it is important, I think, if we're taking it seriously. And you mentioned sort of the degeneracy, right? We're being quote unquote degenerate Bitcoiners. Going back to why this is so controversial in the first place, I think in large part because it's the fundamental growth assumptions are based on the power law model. And I'm fully transparent about that. In fact, I'm not only a power law analyst, and we'll get into this later, but I do a lot of long-term price analysis using the power law because I think it's the most powerful. I think it's the most reflective model out there to capture its long-term price behavior. And so this is the reason it was controversial is because people don't think it's degenerate enough, Mr. M. They think that it is too conservative. And I'm actually kind of with them in a sense that I'm as well a degenerate Bitcoiner, but not really degenerate. I actually think it's a very prudent and data-driven and responsible way to look at the data if you're going to do long-term retirement planning. I think that would just be a basic principle for anybody doing financial planning. What I don't think is necessarily responsible is to, while a lot of things are possible with Bitcoin, is come up with hypothetical future scenarios where, again, some of these might happen, but I think without the data to know if we're going to, have a hyperinflation scenario in 5 years or 10 years, or some of these peer review papers are saying Bitcoin's going to go to $2 million in the next year. This is something that keeps making the rounds. There's a lot of clickbait saying you can retire in 0.001 Bitcoin, on and on and on. There's just a lot of scenarios that we don't really have the data to support yet. So this is what I like about it is it's data driven. And so, for that reason, I think it's one of the most, responsible and perhaps on the conservative end of things, and still very bullish. I mean, if you look at the numbers in terms of what you need to stack, I think it's very achievable for a large set of the population out there.
I would also add on this, and I say this all the time, people want the cake, but they don't want to get fat, right? So this is an opportunity, and just because it's an opportunity, it means there is some risks attached to it, right? If Bitcoin was already well established, well adopted, if 90% of the population would use a Bitcoin, well, they wouldn't be $100,000. Hello. There is a risk attached to this, right? So again, if you're planning for a long-term commitment, such as retirement, maybe you are in your 20s, in your 30s, and you want to have some numbers, well, here's your opportunity. I mean, no financial advice. This is how I see it, as an opportunity to say, hey, this is what 2% of the population have Bitcoin, maybe, if any.
Clearly, we're going through some transformative economic times right now, and I think that a lot of things are destabilizing. That's why, we as Bitcoiners know the role here of Bitcoin for that reason. But I think one of the messages that I'm hoping kind of gets out with this guide is that it's not a free lunch situation. You, especially if you're in your early working years, and you should be grinding away, right? You should be preparing. And if you do that and you make good decisions, you can sock away enough to where at minimum, a decade or two down the road, theoretically, you're gonna be able to have a nice retirement just leaning on Bitcoin alone. It always pays off to, like I say, stack early and stack hard. Yeah.
And before we dive into your guide, which is super interesting, I don't think there's ever been in history a better time to buy Bitcoin. Because if you think about it, in the beginning, in the early days, It was really risky because, yes, of course,
Yes.
the asset was cheap. I get it, but nobody cared. There was no documentation. There was no podcasts. There was no Smitty on X, right? There was no power law. There was no institutions involved, no Michael Saylors, and we can go on all day talk about this. Then the sweet spot comes in. I'm sure you're familiar with the hot and crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think this is where Bitcoin is now. I mean, I think we are right bang on in the best time ever because Bitcoin is not too crazy, not too hot, just in the middle, because it's showing, of course, interest from institutions. It shows adoption. The chain is not broken. So all those things, they only show up in time, right? I mean, in the beginning, in the early days, was super crazy. And at some point, it's going to be super hot. So now we're in that sweet spot, which is sexy enough, but crazy enough, if you know what I mean. So I don't know
Maybe
if you agree.
won't get your heart broken if you.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're actually totally. I mean, all jokes aside, that analogy is really great, and I think I mean, you've been in Bitcoin actually longer than I have. I'm sure, based on our previous chats. But how many times have you run into folks and had your own personal experiences where it was the Wild West? There was no guiding light. There was no reliable information out there. It was based purely on hope and trust that this was going to go somewhere. I mean, the power law itself wasn't even discovered till 2018, even though it had been around pretty solidly for 3 years before that. So I'm totally with you with all the tools at your expense now, and looking at the next 10 years. It's the sweet spot, like you said. You're going to have an amazing return over the next 10 years, particularly. So you have an edge right now that in 10 years, 5 years, people are not going to have.
Spend some time in studying this thing, because when you do look into it objectively, I mean, at least that's what it has done to me. You just open a rabbit hole and you just never come out. It's like seeing a new color. It keeps spotting it everywhere. So I think that's what Bitcoin has done to me, is show me a different thing that now I can't rewind. It's just part of who I am. So this is super interesting. And I know you have a bunch of different numbers because, of course, retirement, like we said, could mean different things for different people.
There's different pages of this. Excuse me. It's a little bit like I tried to make it sort of like an ebook. So there's just a handful of pages depending on, if you look at the header of each page at the top, it says how much you're spending per year. Now that's in today's dollars. So that's the important thing to note here. So for example, if you're going to retire say you're fairly young, you're like a 25-year-old, but you want to retire in 20 years, age 45. There's multiple forces at play here. One of the big ones is inflation. So the proxy that I'm using for inflation here is M2 growth. And that over its the last 100 years has been an average of 7% annual growth rate. So that keeps going on in the background. So for that 25-year-old looking at 2045, that's $100,000 a year in 2025 dollars. So the reason you do that is so that when you're actually retiring, you're preserving that, or pretty close to the same kind of standard of living as what you'd expect if you were to retire on 100K today. And then for each of these different pages, you're basically shuffling between different future annual expenditures. So I have a 50K in there, there's 100K, and I did all the way up for the big ballers, the big whales out there, the $1 million a year scenario. Let's take a look at this for a second, right? Even if you want to have the lifestyle of the super rich and you're spending $1 million a year in today's dollars, and you need something on the order of like around 10 Bitcoin in 20 years from now, which is still kind of crazy to think about,
Well, I love so much about this. Well, first of all, guys, you can see that 7% is, don't trust the CPI, as I call it, instead of CPI, CPI, because they lie on the inflation. 2%, 3%
right.
is not. You can totally figure it out if you go and buy anything into a grocery store today versus even, we don't have to go back 50 years. Like my grandparents, by the way, I know I'm old, but my grandparents, they went on a honeymoon around Europe when we had the Italian lira, which was a long time ago. With the amount of now, you could buy a couple of Starbucks coffee, in LA. So this shows off, right? Okay, the lira has gone down and whatever they've added. We had millions in Italy back in the days before the euro showed up. But you can tell even a meme with the iPhone, if you would have bought, instead of every iPhone, right, you would have bought Bitcoin. And by the way, the iPhone came out in 2007. So this is not that long ago.
Yeah.
Can tell how much he has done, how much inflation has done. And if I'm not mistaken, during COVID, in the span of 6 months, they print 50% of the US dollars. Insane amount of printing. So that's going to have to show up. Like, it's not going to show up immediately. It will, it will eat you slowly.
after COVID, I think I heard similar numbers. It was like within a couple years after that, of over 40, I forget the exact number. You might be right. 40, 50% of the dollars in circulation have been printed.
And the thing is like 7%, which I love, but I would agree. I would say somewhere between 6 and 8. So 7 is perfect. It's just right in the middle. I think you smashed it there as well. And if you think about it, in 10 years is 70%. 70% in 10 years. And the trick is, guys, for those of you that don't think about this, inflation, you are not going to see it because the amount of dollars or whatever fiat you want to use, euros, pounds, it's going to be the same. So if you have in your bank account $10,000, in 10 years from now, you will still have $10,000. The purchasing power, though, is going to be equivalent of 30% because 7% a year times 10 equals 70%. Again, it's an invisible killer, but it's there. And if you don't plan in advance, you will be punched in the face for sure.
Yeah, it's all about hard assets, especially in times like now, right? I think, and there's literally no harder asset than this out there. I think there is gold, which is doing. We'll get to that, I guess, later. But the other thing, just to mention on here, is that people always ask about the volatility. So the way I constructed this is, so there's the power law. It's a simple model that captures the long-term behavior. It's a scaling law. So what I did here was you can break it out into, statistically, you can break it out into different percentiles or quantiles. What I did for this to project out these future values and the price appreciation, I used the 5th percentile. So think of that average line that goes through everything. And you basically take that model and you shift it down. And this might actually be a good segue into the next diagram I sent you. Yes, this support line, this is actually exactly what is being used in the model, that orange line and the blue line, because they're essentially the same model. And the reason that's important for the retirement guide is that you take all that, you remove the concern that people get, rightfully so, from those 80% downturns every time you go through a bubble phase. It's always basing the price appreciation on what's following that 5th percentile. So for that reason, it's in a sense protecting you as you're saving and accumulating what you're going to need for future spend down scenarios in retirement. It's sort of a it's the bubble free line. So that's an important takeaway there too.
You can see in white there, all those peaks, all those bubble popping, they could disrupt, right? And freak people out. But if you stay on the baseline.
Bubbles of that magnitude, typically not a great recipe for like retirement, a smooth retirement process. As it's not something you want in there at all. So this is meant to counter that. So the 5th percentile I've been looking at this a lot. So I tend to use this model. It's the full data model here that you're showing, the orange line. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if you take all the data all the way up to today and you use the power law and you shove that down to the 5th percentile, essentially, you look at the 5th quantile, it will give you that line. Now, if you take data only from 2015 and then project that forward, you will get that the two models overlap directly on top of each other, which tells you a couple things. This is like a really strong, reliable support line. Like if Bitcoin, and it does fall below that line 5% of the time by definition. That's what the 5th percentile means. So it nicks down below it. And I think I have some analysis somewhere I showed the number of days it spends below that. But it's very rare. It happened, I believe, during COVID, and it jumped right back above it. So if it happens, it'll usually happen for a number of days, potentially weeks. I think the longest I saw was it happened for 7 or 8 weeks and then jump back above it ever. So it tells you how strong that support line is, but it also tells you like this model has been around since late 2015. That's like almost 10 years of the exact same model. So all around, I think it's worth paying attention to. And again, this is the fundamentally what the what the retirement guide is based on. People are like, well, what would a failure case look like? Like say the power law starts to fail and Bitcoin's like really, what would that look like? And what I always tell people is that, well, what would happen is you would see that price dip below that 5 percentile line and it would stay down there, and it would stay down there way too long and probably keep trending down below that. That is the scenario that I would start to get a little bit worried with the Lindy behavior of this and the reliability of this. And again, 10 years of like literally the exact same parameters in the model. And the fact that, look how many orders of magnitude this is scaled. 10 cents, dollar, 10, 100. Like assets don't do this and then start to fizzle out. So it's in my mind, it's something it's the strength of the network that keeps pushing it higher, which all gets back to scaling laws and power laws. So anyway, I think that it's very failure resistant. It's becoming more failure resistant all the time.
Never in history of humans an asset has gone to $2 trillion and then failed after, right? So there are certain
That's right. Yeah.
caps that once you surpass them, then downhill, right? I agree. So it's very unlikely that it's going to happen.
A lot of people, and I probably should have sent you over I looked at different countries and how it can vary from country to country. That might be interesting to spend some time on maybe in the future, but there are definitely jurisdictions outside of the United States and even within the United States. And, if you're single, there's a lot of different scenarios where you might not even need $100,000 a year to retire. And so many people have pointed this out. So the nice thing about this is it's kind of a sliding scale. So you can cut everything in half. You very may well be living somewhere, I don't know, Portugal or Bolivia. There's lots. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but something closer to 50,000 a year might be very appropriate for that jurisdiction. In which case, your stacking goal seems to be pretty well in reach, right? If you want to go retire, I'm just making a country up like Bolivia or something like that. Maybe you got family there, and you want to do that in 10 years. Stack one Bitcoin and you might be good to go over there based on the cost of living. And so it's very, very dependent on where you live and other things like taxes and things like that. So
even you can stay in the same city, but live in a different lifestyle, right? You can drive a cheaper car, you can wear different type of clothing, you can cook your own food, you can brew your own coffee. Like you said, the spectrum is quite vast. But it's nice to have a tool that's going to allow you to say, okay, how do I dial into this? Like, for example, I live in Dubai. There is people, they spend $1 million a month and people, they spend $1 million in 10 years, right? It's up to you what kind of place you want to live into, what kind of lifestyle you want to go out and what restaurant you go into, you go on holiday, how do you fly, business, economy, first class. So like you said, the spectrum is vast, but it's good to have a tool like this. Is going to give you some sort of an indication on how this asset is going to grow over time. I think it's brilliant.
Correct. And there's lots of preferences, like you said, how people want to decide to live. And, really at the end of the day, this is, and I said this in my original post when I released it, is this is meant to be a goal. This is meant to be sort of on the conservative side, data-driven planning tool where you can actually, people want to know what's the logic I should use to come up with a goal. Like, yeah, of course it's not going to be, to the second or third decimal point exactly what you need that year. But you know what I mean? It's like it's meant to be a stacking target. Like anything in life, if you have a goal, you should have the right calculus, the right logic to set something, and then work your way towards that. And for most people out there, this gets you on the probably a little bit more than what most people need in most scenarios. Because like most people don't feel that 7% inflation. There's some there's things like elasticity that come into play where they usually, depending on the year, they may feel a 7% or higher, but a lot, you could go decades with feeling a little bit lower than that. So, and then on top of that, this is not considering, like I said, the upside moves that Bitcoin can do. So certain years can be really great for you. You might be ahead of the curve based on how much you've already stacked. So you want to talk about what's going on right now?
By the way, I like what you said, because here's the thing. Most people don't even have a plan. So having a plan, it would be like, imagine you have a cage around you and you want to be free. Well, the first thing would be acknowledge that the cage exists. Okay, there is a cage around me. How do I open the lock, right? But most people don't even see the cage. So the fact that you are acknowledging that there's going to be a problem or an opportunity, like I like to say, down the road in 20, 15, depending on your age, maybe 5 months, maybe 70 years, who knows, it doesn't matter. But as long as you acknowledge there's going to be something is going to happen to you later on, you can have a plan. And once you have a plan, you will start paying attention. And where attention goes, the thing grows, right? So you can then start stacking hard, like you say, which I love. And then this is going to take you to a different mindset. And like I said, maybe Bitcoin is not for you. That's totally fine. But that doesn't mean that you won't have the problem or the opportunity to face the fact that 7% a year is going to compound.
I think the best way to sum this up, and it's like one of the first things you said is like, have a plan. We're talking about retirement here. Big message is have a plan. Don't not have a plan for retirement. Have a plan, and hoping and praying that 0.01 Bitcoin in living in a wealthy city somewhere in the West, wherever, and that's just going to work out for you because Bitcoin is awesome, and it is awesome. That's not a plan. Sorry, that's not a real plan. this will get you a plan, at least a first approximation of something that's going to work for a lot of people. So
if tomorrow we're shooting higher, I know now is the time where everyone is panicking, fear and greed is 22, whatever, but if this thing is going to move faster than you anticipated, well, you can then decide to be with the plan. Maybe you can retire early, or maybe if there is a bump in the road and it takes another whatever years or something, you can stack harder. So you can adjust, you can fine tune the plan, but you only be aware of this fine tuning if you have the plan, like you said, because if you don't have a plan, well, then there's nothing you can fine tune. You're just going to smash your face into the concrete, which is 7% a year, right?
Start with the course tuning, and then don't try to fine tune everything all the time. That's not a good strategy.
Do you want to jump into the
Sure.
into the fun October?
Yeah, let's go into not October so far.
I saw a fun meme this morning. Someone flipped the chart. It says he's going up.
I wish it was just a user error and I had this all upside down on accident.
I've never seen anything like this because everyone shares tables and October and data, but this is such an interesting view because you can clearly see we had in the past at least 4 instances where October was indeed negative, right?
I did not see it going this way, right? I mean, you put, again, we're just talking about having a plan, the outlook, I call it. Well, just look at every historical October since 2009. And that's what I'm showing here. So each one of these colored lines, all the red lines, those are the previous years where October has ultimately gone into the negative in terms of monthly return. And then all the rest of those green lines are all the other years. So there's literally only been, I think, 4 out of all the past 15, 16 years where by the end of the month it came out just below 0. All the rest of them were positive. And October is also the top 1 or 2 performing in terms of monthly returns months of the year. And so, for all those reasons, you kind of just look at history and you say, well, it's a decent amount of data points, a lot of years, and you see the trajectory here, you see the trends, but we are not following one of those normal years. So, in fact, since October 15th, 16th, as of like this date in October, we're officially the second worst of all time Octobers, at negative 10.7% where we sit currently.
It's going to be a tough one between you because we are both uber bullish. But okay, if I look at this, which I love, by the way, yes, of course, we're going a little bit down, even though we started kind of above, right? Which is a good sign. Maybe now we are leveling up, the fact that we boosted off. But I can see here, for example, a case where, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but we've gone down here on this October, but then we powered through. So maybe, and I know that I'm obviously looking at this with a bullishness in my eyes, but maybe we still have time to curve. By the way, the month is not over. Today is 17, and then stay in the cloud, which the cloud, by the way, I think is kind of the average.
Cloud is the middle. Basically, think of it like the middle 50%. If you were to take like the 25th to the 75th percentile, so it's kind of the middle of the road of everything. You're shaving off the top. There's so many other bullish signals that we haven't even gotten into, right? Like we could go down a list of a couple dozen signals, 9 out of 10 of them at least. Maybe all of them would be. Just look at the pi cycle indicators. There's all these indicators. I mean, we just had rate cut announcements. We're expecting like 3 more. Trump is not going to, I just think politically, and whatever you think about politics, wants to leave an economic legacy during his administration. People are skeptical, of course, but I think that, that there's going to be a time limit to that. And I just think there's a lot of liquidity and a lot of investment ahead of us that we're not anticipating. And I think this cycle is different. All the kind of cycle prediction bros out there, which I think you'll talk to Plan C. We've never been, cut from that cloth. We've always kind of run counter to that. Yeah, this cycle is different, and I kind of always thought it didn't need to be the same. Bitcoin doesn't have to follow the exact same rules. We didn't have that many data points to begin with. So I just think even if we don't bounce here, like you said, look at some of the past years in October. They've had some 10, 15, 20% moves up in that later half of October. So never say never. Even if it goes down a little bit more from here, we could still break even or maybe even get between 120 and 130K by the end of the month. It's not totally far-fetched. We still have November, which also happens to be a very historically bullish month, right? So I don't really have people ask me what's my target for October. And I've been saying it's between 130 and 150K. But I'm not predicting that price. I think people are like, what's your price prediction? And if you're wrong, then you're a failure and your models are off. I'm not trying to predict the price. That's a pretty fair range for it to fall into. I wouldn't be surprised if it still makes it into that range, but Yeah, it could be wrong too.
I like to see it more into a different time frame. Like I'm thinking about years. That's why I love your retirement plan, because it's not something I don't even look into 1 4 year cycle. This is even if we have cycles or whatever, it's not even enough. Like who cares? If you do zoom out, you will see that at some point Bitcoin during COVID, for example, was trading at $3,000. Okay. Do you care if you bought at 3, at 5, even at 10, even at 20? We are over 100,000 for now. Maybe we go a little bit lower. Who cares? If you zoom out and you have a longer time frame, doesn't actually matter. October becomes irrelevant. It's fun to look into the data to project where we could go next, but who cares? Of course, you could maybe argue that if you play different games, you win different prizes. If you do trade, you make more money, you multiply your Bitcoins. For me, 50% on average a year is plenty.
It's the 4-year moving CAGR, which is right now we're sitting, I think, close to 45%. And that's going to fluctuate year to year, but it's that average that it's better than anything else out there in the market. So couldn't agree more. And check this out. I don't know if you've seen this, and I don't remember who originally pulled the statistic out and ran this, but I did confirm it at one point. Is that in all of Bitcoin's history, there was a 0% chance, no matter where you bought it, that if you held for 4 years or more, that you would be in the red. Everybody would be in profit after 4 years. Statistically, 0% chance. So, and the cool thing is, because volatility is actually diminishing as we go further in time, 16 years forward, those bubbles are going to decrease. That time window is actually going to, that profitability time window is actually going to decrease. So it's not even going to have to take an average of 4 years. That average is going to creep inward, which is even more incentive for a long-term investor, in my opinion.
Remember, the 7% is the number you want to fight, right? Because 7% is the amount of money you lose every year. As long as you do more than 7, you are golden. Let's forget about 50% on average. Let's cut it in half. Let's say we go 25%. Still, it's enough for
over
you.
3 times. Yeah.
Exactly. So, fun fact, actually, October median is twice the amount only in 1 month.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
How cannot be enough? I really don't understand. And I wanted to show you something because it looks like we are indeed into a channel. I'm not a TA expert, so I just like to look into charts because I like behavior of things, like you show the data in October. But it looks like we are hopping off this channel here, which we tested multiple times, as you can see. 1 here, actually 2 here. By the way, this is the monthly chart, which is my absolute favorite time frame that shows how zoom out I am into this thing.
Beautiful.
And we are now basically hanging on a thread there because we are indeed about to bounce and or break off this channel because it's possible. First of all, you can see this is the end of the year. There is a little bit left maybe to go to. And if you think it's not enough, you can see the Bitcoin, when Bitcoin goes up, as well as when it goes down. We've seen these 20K candles, elevator to hell, but sometimes he likes to go the same thing on the upside, right? And what I see here is like you mentioned earlier, it's a different kind of behavior. It's like stepping up, like a little staircase is building, right? And maybe this is the effect of institutions. They have a different impact on the price. I mean, okay, I know we say it all the time, this time is different, but we are now acknowledging that countries and corporations and different type of players are playing the game. So how can the game be the same? Like there has to be some sort of a difference in this. Otherwise, we're implying that whoever is playing has no impact, right?
100%. I think there is a clear structural change in this accumulation phase for Bitcoin when you look at previous cycles. You know, I've been calling this a crab crawl, where it's, if you look at it log, like you have it, I think is log linear. It looks like a straight line, staircase to heaven kind of thing scenario. And yeah, right now we're kind of tapping the lower bound of that right now and really putting that to the test. I think that's interesting, although I am also not a TA guy. If you were to look at this, I mentioned this in our stream the other day, but like I think it was about a month ago, I was plotting this, and that's such a tight correlation to an exponential. It's like a 92% R squared. Yes, we're actually testing the lower bound of that right now. So it seems to be like a local support. I don't know why. I don't know if it's manipulation, if it's people trading, people getting out and getting into gold. It could be a lot of reasons, but the fact that there's a transformation in that accumulation phase. Actually, if you look at every historical accumulation phase, like what you just put with the yellow lines, and you look at that for every historical, so that's like 2015 to 2017, and then the one before that, and then the one between 2018, 2021. Over time, the slope changes. If you look at the one we're in now, the slope actually picked back up for the first time from the last 4. So there's definitely a directional change here too. So either we're about to head into a massive breakout and run up to an amazing number like in the 200s and 300s, which I hope we are, into the beginning of 2026. Or, I mean, what do you think is more likely? You think the air is starting to be taken out of the balloon and we're heading back towards a bear market right now? I just don't see, like, with all the indicators and all the bullish economic news on the horizon, I don't see why we would be, unless all that stuff was totally priced in and there's massive market manipulation. I don't know.
If I had to pick a side, I would say we are in this phase, and what we are missing is the banana zone in the end, right? Of course, now people are struggling to believe, because whenever the price corrects, people want to panic. It makes sense. Here in Greece is at 22. Insane to believe that Bitcoin is trading over $100,000, 107 as we speak, and people are in panic. This is super bullish, super bullish. Even if we are going to, I don't know, correct a little bit or chill down those numbers for a little bit longer, we haven't had that banana zone, which means the correction on the downside is going to be smoother.
Yep.
Diminishing in volatility. Hey, we get it both sides. So if we go up a lot, we go down a lot. But if we go up less, we go down less.
It will require us to be patient and see how things play out. But I think people will realize, again, if they're hodlers, if we don't get this upside volatility like people want to get this peak, well, just wait in 3 years. You're going to be very happy if it keeps hugging that power law trend, right? I think there's benefits and trade-offs. I think the trade-off of sacrificing that final banana zone wick up for the downside crashes so that we get the benefit of a steadier trend along the Bitcoin power law, which is, again, doing that 45% average 4-year CAGR. I think that's well worth the trade-off. I would make that trade today. I think it's possible.
And by the way, pointing off the obvious here. So into this channel that we are, which is a conservative channel, we've seen 200%. Look at this, 200%. From the bottom to the top here, boom, wow. 122%.
Big rise.
Massive moves. So guys, remember, we are fighting 7. And we've seen here already in 3 times over 100%, right? So even in the most terrible move that we have here, it's still 44%. So I really don't understand. This is what Bitcoin should do a year on average. And we've done it from April to October. This is mind-blowing. I don't know why people, they want to go into other stuff and say Bitcoin is not enough and I want to gamble into memes. I really don't understand. Like, everyone does whatever they want, but here we like to preach Bitcoin for this reason, right? Because at the end of the day, remember, from the bottom of the market, which was $15,000 to where we are today, we've gone up almost 600%. This is nuts.
It's nuts.
How can this not be enough? Again, we are fighting 7. We've done 600. So 10x almost.
People get desensitized, right? Pretty easily. So you just kind of have to zoom out. I think it's important with Bitcoin. You need to zoom out and you need to zoom in. Mr. M is a wizard of on-the-fly production. Really a master. I could not do what you do, my friend. But before we move on to the gold stuff, I just wanted to show, and I think it's probably a month or 2 since I pulled this up, but like the October stuff, I had been tracking this crab crawl path that we're on. And I think it's exactly structure that you've been analyzing, like kind of via TA. And I just wanted to supplement that with the way that I've been looking at things with this crab crawl market. And I actually define this as starting at towards the end of 2022, right? When the price kind of bottomed out. And what has it been doing this entire way? Now, the first thing you'll notice is that it's log scaled. Its y-axis is log scaled. And the x-axis date is linear scaled still. So I'm calling this a crab crawl because it's doing what you said. It's basically going up and to the right, sort of like a staircase. But if you looked at this in linear, it'd be an exponential. But because it's I like straight lines. So if you look in the legend there, the fit here is 0.92%. So even though right now we just clipped over the -1 sigma. If you look at the latest price, right, where the white line kind of ends, we just did this little dip. People are freaking out. It's looking like it's bending. People don't like it. But look how many times it's actually touched that -1 standard deviation. That's that first dotted line below the price. So it's dipped there. I mean, it was even there, in the latter half of 2024. We spent a decent amount of time kind of dancing around it, then jumped back up to +1 sigma, crossed back over beginning of 2025, hit the negative 1 sigma in was that like March of this year, then went back up and danced around the average for half a year, and now we're touching it again. So in a statistical sense, following this crab crawl market, it's actually not the most unusual thing. So again, I think this might add some perspective for the viewers here, just from a statistical perspective, and then look where the channels keep taking us. Not that it's not going to do this forever because it's an exponential. It's going to end up coming back and reverting back towards the power law, but it sort of implies 200K. If we keep going on this trend, we could hit 200,000 as early as, not that it's very likely to do this, but December 17th, if it wicks up to do the +2 sigma. If it wicks up to the +1 sigma, it could be as early as March 28th of 2026. But if it hugs the average and it just keeps marching with pretty low volatility, we could get there early July 2026. So by all accounts, we just talked about how different this cycle is with this market. If it keeps doing what it's doing for the next, half a year or so, I think we're still on a decent trajectory to hit that 200K plus range. And then who knows what it's going to do after that? Could start to fizzle out, could wick up from there, could get into the 300,000 range. But I'm not so torn up, I think, by the current action. And I'm not that, but again, it kind of requires a little bit of a perspective change. So just wanted to share this with you.
This is really interesting. Any market in general, they like to punish the most participants, right? So now everyone was expecting October to be blah, blah, we're going up, we're going to the moon. And then maybe we are not doing what we are expecting. So now everyone is going to be bearish, they're going to short, and the market is going to go, right? So it's going to punish everybody twice, on the way down and on the way up.
Fortune favors the patient. Like a crab. I think crabs are patient. They just go with the waves, come and crash up against the rocks. They stay steadfast.
People say, oh, you have to do absolutely nothing. Well, the art of doing absolutely nothing is actually really hard. Buy DCA into the asset as many times as you can and just do absolutely nothing. It's very difficult because greed and fear are going to play the devil and the angel on your shoulder saying, hey, it's going up, sell some. Hey, it's going down, do this. Oh, we should sell now. You should buy now. But if you manage to master those two emotions and do absolutely nothing, that's it, man.
It's a simple strategy, but it's not easy. And I think it can be quite painful, right? So I think fortune will favor the Stoics who can, yes, control their emotions through all of this. And, I think Stephen Pernaud, I know you've interviewed him before. He commented on my page and said, great ways to not succumb to your emotions are not look at linear charts and don't look at short-term charts, I think he said. Yeah. Great rules to live by in Bitcoin.
Okay, gold. So we were saying, first of all, congrats on gold reaching $30 trillion. By the way, fun fact, I was looking into the data. I don't remember how long it took. In 2025 alone, gold has done, I think, 4 times the amount of Bitcoin in terms of market cap, because at the end of the year it was 21 trillion, I think. So 9 trillion in, let's say, 10 months. And Bitcoin is just over
we've added almost $1 trillion in market cap. Like, just where did this come from? Yeah.
Crazy.
It's moving the target for Bitcoin, right? We were supposed to catch up, and I know it will. But so a lot of people aren't used to seeing a power law trend inverted. So a lot of people see the up and to the right graph. This is basically showing how many Bitcoins does it cost to buy an ounce of gold. And of course, it's been the best year ever for gold for many decades. But if you zoom out and you want to look at how expensive gold was if you were to price things in Bitcoin, which, I think the longer you're in Bitcoin, the more you think about things in terms of Bitcoin. So it's getting less expensive very reliably over the last 16 years, gold. But again, there's patience, there's volatility here. There was a time at the beginning of 2023 where gold, for the first time, actually not the first time gold priced in Bitcoin hit 0.1 Bitcoin, right? So a tenth of a Bitcoin per ounce. The first time that happened was in 2018, but it just tapped it. And then the average kind of drifted back up to maybe about a half a Bitcoin, and then started trending back down to pretty permanently being below a tenth of a Bitcoin. Went through the bull cycle in 2021, came back up, hit a tenth of a Bitcoin again. And now, despite the amazing year that gold is having, and it is indeed outperforming this year Bitcoin, and silver is also, I think, outperforming Bitcoin now for the first time this year. Despite all of that, we're still on trend for gold to be demonetized, right? To depreciate in terms of Bitcoin, all the way down to being a tenth of a Bitcoin per gold ounce in just the next 4 years. again, this trend doesn't really seem to have been shaken. The only difference I can see is that it's hugging that trend line more tightly than it ever has. I don't think Bitcoin, my opinion, of course, I don't think gold can, at least in a stable, long-standing way, maintain another $1 trillion added to its market cap over a very short period of time. Maybe it does temporarily, but I just think this is all being dominated by the trend, the power law trend that we're seeing with Bitcoin, if you zoom out. And I think that at the end of the day, that's just the truth. Looking forward to being able to afford more gold in Bitcoin in 4 years, if I even want to start buying gold at that point. There's lines out the door to buy gold right now, but you don't have to wait in lines out the door to buy Bitcoin, right? If you stop and be stoic about it and look at this long-term trend, realize what the hardest asset is, that's really what makes gold valuable in the first place, in my opinion.
The definition of FOMO is exactly that. So you're following a trend. So Bitcoin and gold, they're going up. So whenever we say, oh, Bitcoin is going to go and pass gold at some point, which is possible, that doesn't mean gold is not going up, right? So they will have a different market, but gold is seen as the canary in the mine. So when the canary dies, then the alarm goes off because gold has been there since the beginning. It's older, right? So respect the elders. I get it. But at some point, like you said, people are going to start. Bitcoin is 16 years old, man. It's a teenager.
Yeah, gold. Yeah.
Nothing. And again, if you want to ride the opportunity wave, well, then I'm not saying there is no opportunity in gold, but there's a difference in there because the market that gold has is way more established, which means the gains are not going to be as big, right?
Much deeper capital pool. There's $30 trillion in gold and about, what is it, just under 2 trillion, right, for Bitcoin.
Exactly, like you said. So choose your player wisely.
Choose your player. The point is that zoom out and see where the trend is. Just because they're having an amazing year, there are certain years gold has had amazing years. You look at the market crash 2008, we're clearly going through something right now. I think ultimately Bitcoin it's going to be great for Bitcoin adoption. So
7% a year is gone. So how do I fight that? Well, it's up to you. You can choose a basket of different things. You can go and invest into art or watches, whatever it makes sense for you. But not acknowledging the problem or the opportunity, well, that's a big one issue, I think, because that's the only constant we know, right? All the other things are variable.
Yes, that is the key. More people need to recognize that fundamentally. I agree. That will take you on the right path. First step is to realize there's a problem.
Exactly. And then, of course, Bitcoin is inevitable. At least that's how I see it. That's
the fine print, right? Yeah.
Exactly. That's a conclusion. But Smitty, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. I truly enjoyed our chat. So I'm super excited you joined the Cool Cats on Wednesday. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your chart. Your work is remarkable. So guys, make sure if you don't, go and follow Smitty. Link in the description as always. So really appreciate having you on the show.
Thanks so much. Huge debt of gratitude to you, Mr. M. Thanks for having me on your platform. Really looking forward to more conversations with you like this.
Likewise. And guys, remember to slap the like, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you on Wednesday. Cheers.